Mr. Chairman, sir, mentioned, among other things, Bengalis lack business acumen. What they don't lack is mathematical sense with Madhyamik and everything else. So what I did was, while I was waiting for my turn, I made a few calculations. There are 365 days in a year available for work in Bengal. Now, 52 weeks, every week has a weekend, that's 2 days off per week. So you straight away have 261 days left available for work. Now, since you're in Bengal, you pretty much work 9 to 5. So in effect, that's 16 hours each day away from work. The good news is that that translates to 174 days available, not available from work. So you have 87 days left. Good, we can deal with that. Now, you're a thinking man in Bengal. You need your tea breaks and cigarettes, you know, intellectual stimulation. So that's an hour off every day. That's 11 days. And just because you have tea doesn't mean you can starve yourself to death. So with an hour's lunch break every day, that's a further 11 days. So you're left with 65 days. Good, this gets better and better. Now let's face it, with dengue and change of season virals and flus floating about in the air, you get sick 5 days every year. It's inevitable. I mean, health suffers. So you're left with 60. 60 days too many, but wait, we can deal with that. We'll fix that. I just checked the NI Act. On an average, West Bengal has 20 public holidays each year. You know, so many gods, so many pujos, so many people to be kept happy, secular, non-secular holidays. That's 20 days gone. So you're left with 40. Now let's face it, because you're working so hard, you will wangle 20 days off for vacation. You have to go to Puri and Pelling with your extended family. So you're left with 20 days. Now 10 days are waterlogged anyway, it's rained out. And the other 10 days, there's a band or some taxi and bus strike and petrol is too expensive anyway. So you're left with nothing. So you have no work. Of course, you have a right to not work, of course. Mr. Chairman, sir, members of the jury, my most worthy opponents, ladies and gentlemen, this House believes that the right to not work is a fundamental one in Bengal, and I'm speaking for the motion. Article 41 of the Constitution is the only place in the law of the land that talks about a right to work. It's a directive to the state to procure the right to work in certain specified cases alone, subject to economic competence and capacity. Aha. That's the loophole, ladies and gentlemen. West Bengal is currently the most indebted state in the country, not in lakhs, not in crores. Rupees 2 lakh crores. I don't even know how many zeros there are. And on top of that, 94% of its budget allocation goes in pension and salaries. Article 41 can go for a toss. Clearly, you don't have a right to work in Bengal. So what you're left with, you have a right to not work. It's very simple. The rights as a concept evolved as fundamental entitlements because you had to address natural urges inherent to human nature. If the natural urge is to not work, what can you do about it? You can sack someone, you can shout at someone, but you can't stop a man from not working. It's against the law of the land. Who are you, his mother-in-law? You know, it's just because someone is thinking doesn't mean he's not working. I'm not saying that. Victor Hugo said there is visible labor and there is invisible labor. Bengal is a state of mind, but it's not an idle state of mind you. You know, I checked the West Bengal service rules. If you're a government employee, then you are entitled to compensation, subsistence allowance, plus dearness allowance, plus medical expenses. And all this is after you've been sacked or dismissed or removed from service. You have to be very greedy or a sick masochist to still want to work after that, and you disgust me. You know, I think like Bengal. I think like my friend Klapka. I like work. It fascinates me. I can sit and look at it for hours. And I can sit and stand here and talk about it for about 4.5 minutes. Thank you.
These days, do you always need to go to work to work? People often work from the house, from home, because we have that machine in front of us. What is it? Tablet? Somebody said, don't call it a computer anymore. Then you're backdated. So in front of the tablet, People do work from home, don't they?
People don't work much in offices. I don't know how much work they get done at home in Bengal. There's a friend of mine who said, I always go to work late, so I try to make up for it by leaving early. I think that is basically the philosophy apostrophized and followed in Bengal. And that's all right. That's what I'm trying to say. I mean, fundamental rights are civil liberties which are guaranteed to ensure your peace and harmony. So if the vote banks and the electorate think that working never did bring them any peace or harmony, then so be it. And that's all right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Borat. That was a very spirited defense of the theme. May I now request Dr. Krishnendu Mukherjee, also representing the Calcutta Club, to speak against the motion.
A couple of days ago, I was having a minor argument with my wife about the difference between the two words, getting attention and getting respect. Trying to explain things to me, my wife told me, you see, girls want attention and women want respect. And you men seem to need both. I agreed with her, but to my own horror, I made a Freudian slip and I said, yes, men want both girls and women. Mr. Chairman, members of the House, ladies and gentlemen, it's all about perspectives and then ultimately about perception. If you get your perspectives wrong, your perception wrong, then you end up with what you heard just now, and you will be hearing more of them, permanently perspiring participants of the proposition. Now, they would be talking about fundamental rights from a very fundamentally wrong perspective. I do not know what Article 41 of Indian Constitution says, but ladies and gentlemen, I can assure you that nobody, no society can give you a fundamental right to work. There can be a fundamental right to education, to health, to justice, to equality, but no fundamental right to work. Therefore, a fundamental right of not working does not arise. But jokes apart, ladies and gentlemen, let's do some serious debating. My previous speaker chose mathematics and showed you that there are 365 days in Bengal, as if there are 366 days in Balochistan. You see, human beings are human beings everywhere. And human resource development is a scientific subject. It tells us that there are three kinds of workers, Class A, Class B, and Class C. The Class A is very ambitious, go-getter. Class B is medium, they are steady workers, but they balance life and work. And the C is generally lazy, as good as it gets, but you have to make them work. Now, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Moderator told us about, use the word contemporary. Let's look at contemporary history. Why has communism failed in the rest of the world? Because state-run enterprises become monopolies, and invariably they breed nepotism, corruption, they weed out competitive spirit, they weed out meritocracy. What comes in is mediocrity. What has happened in Bengal for the last 30 years is exactly the same. There has been militant trade union. There has been rampant politicization of every institution of the society. Unfortunately, I believe, despite the change, this has not yet changed. And once again, there is a pampering of mediocrity. Now, what has that got to do with today's debate? What has that got to today's debate is that we are always told that in the last 30, 35 years, there has been a flight of capital from West Bengal. What we are not told is, apart from capital, there has been a flight of brains, flight of human resources. Most of the A, Class A, are gone. Half of the B are gone. What we are left with is only one part of the B and the rest is C. The proposition today is proposing this motion from a popular perception that the quality of work, the productivity of work in many sectors in Bengal is eroding. There is more than an element of truth in that perception, particularly in public sector units in government sectors. But you don't have any accountability. If you are close to the dadas of your organization or didis of your local political circles, then you can get away with anything. But that loss of productivity is not only and not purely because people do not work, because there aren't enough competent people to work. And secondly, this mediocrity brews in a strange kind of social mindset what I refer to as a happy-go-lucky mindset. You know, you're in cruise control. You are happy with the average. You never, ever actually pursue, with ambition, something better. Now, this refers to my generation, mid-30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. But what is happening to the generation today, ladies and gentlemen? Those are in 20s, those are in 30s. Who says people in Bengal do not want to work? They do not find enough work. There are dozens and scores of vocational institutes, educational institutes coming up to train people in different vocation, occupations, and profession. See the young boys and girls out there. Mr. Moderator spoke about strikes and bunds. 5 to 10 years ago, there was a strike and bund almost every other week. This is one part of a good political will, but at least today, nowadays, we do not see strikes and bunds. People themselves have got fed up with strikes and bunds. I can only tell you that this is not only true for Bengal, largely, given a latitude, this is true for the whole of India. I remember having read a book about a couple of years ago, I can't remember the author, In Spite of the Gods, which tells us that whatever we have achieved, whatever India has achieved, whatever little bit Bengal has achieved, it is not because of governance, it is despite the governance. Thank you.
Some people think that it's not just the willingness to work, but enough work is not available here in Bengal. How would you respond to that?
Yeah, that's precisely what I said, Mr. Jury, that particularly the generation today, the one in 20s, the one in 30s, who haven't grown up in the 80s and 90s, they very much want to work. Why do we work? We want a better livelihood. We want a feeling of self-worthwhileness. But there's not enough work in Bengal. And history is repeating itself, the category A, the category B workers are leaving Bengal. We only talk of flight of capital. We do not talk of flight of human resources. So coming back to my own point, your perception that the quality of government sector is eroding is not because people are not working. That's one part of the story. The other part of the story is, not all, but majority, we do not have enough competent people back here in Bengal anymore to give the quality of work that we need. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mukherjee. Shall we now move on to the Calcutta Cricket and Football Club? Since we are moving in alphabetical order, I think it's Dr. Debanjan Chakraborty. Oh, the other way around, but it's been presented separately. Okay, Mr. Anirudh Chari to speak for the motion. Mr. Anirudh Chari to speak for the motion.
Workers of Bengal, relax. You have nothing to lose but your adda. Mr. Chairman, sir, members of the House, my worthy opponents and judges. If Dante Alighieri had lived in 21st century Bengal instead of 14th century Florence, the seventh circle of hell would have been very different. We love to stand and stare in West Bengal. Give us the right to do it, because it is a fundamental right, it is a choice. Because what good does it do to work? We can go into an abstruse discussion about legality, about constitutions, about wages, about hours, about working conditions, about productivity. It's not going to do any good. Because ultimately, the right not to work, or the right to not work, is so deeply ingrained in the people of this state, because there is a sense of frustration, there is a sense of ennui, that no matter what you do, no matter how you strive, it's not going to make any difference. There is a monstrous cabal of political ideologues, of politicians, of bureaucrats, of ideology mongers who have got together to create a situation where the man in Bengal feels impotent, he feels lost, and there is absolutely nothing that he can do, nothing that he can do to feel productive, where every act that he undertakes, he ultimately asks himself, well, all right, if I get into work at 9 a.m. instead of 10, and I try to achieve as much as I can, what is it ultimately going to lead to? The files will get passed around. There is no initiative being taken by anyone. Why should I pull my weight when no one else is pulling theirs? And here lies the crux of the problem. The right not to work has become so fundamental that it has seeped into the very fiber of our beings. It has become an essential part of the character of Bengal. So whether you actually enact a law to make it fundamental or not is immaterial, because it is fundamentally part of the core of Bengal's being. Because we keep coming back to the question of what good is it going to do. There is a state which has forsaken its citizenry. Why should the citizenry work in a state which does not give it any rights? In a state where dissent is not tolerated? In a state where it is perfectly acceptable to be idle? Marx had a son-in-law called Lafarge, and Lafarge wanted to be lazy. He, in fact, said it's good to be lazy. And here in Bengal, we have taken laziness to a fine art. In fact, we have taken it and made it something very fundamental. I'd like to quote Adam Smith here, who's really not the favorite of people in West Bengal, but nonetheless gives a very clear perspective so far as this motion is concerned. And he says, "The understandings of the greater part of men are necessarily formed by their ordinary employments. The man whose life is spent in performing a few simple operations has no opportunity to exert his understanding, and he generally becomes as stupid and ignorant as it is possible for any human creature to become." And herein lies the rub. In Bengal, we are so used to performing tedious, boring, pointless tasks which none of us enjoys and feels that is not going to amount to anything. We feel it is better to merely stand and stare, to waste opportunities, to look back and say what could have been or the glory that had been, which is something we're very fond of doing in this state, and then fundamentally ask ourselves, but it's not going to amount to anything at all, so why should I do it? And here, Mr. Chairman, sitting in the Tollygunge Club, we've all got time to stand and stare. None of us is working. None of us is spending this evening engaged in productive labor of any kind. We are debating a fairly abstruse topic, which is not going to do any good at the end of things. You and I will go home and we will have exactly the same opinions that we had. What's it achieved? Nothing. But we are flaneurs. We like to intellectually debate topics. We love to stand and stare. And that is precisely what we've done. We've shown that the right to work is indeed a fundamental one in this state. And therefore, we debate, we talk, we enjoy ourselves. And that's the spirit of Bengal.
Your erudition has been very entertaining as well, Mr. Chari. Here in Bengal, there are a number of multinational and companies as well as companies of domestic repute, such as Wipro, TCS, IBM, Capgemini, Unilever, Tata Steel, and so on. Do you seriously believe that they don't work there?
They certainly do, but they're isolated examples. When one talks about the moral fiber, when one talks about the broad sweep, when one talks about something like national character, for example, there will always be exceptions. But the problem, the fundamental problem is the exceptions are few and far between. For the examples that you quoted, I can list any number of other organizations and any number of other entities who do virtually no work at all. And it's precisely that that number far outweighs the names that you read out that we have a problem in this state.
Thank you, Mr. Chari. I must say the standards of intellectual, shall we say, aspiration or achievement in the cricket club of the Calcutta Cricket and Football Club far exceed my expectations. I know, we've been trying, I know. I've been a member of that club for the last 30 years too. But I'm very, very impressed. Thank you very much for a very, very erudite and extremely well argued presentation. Ms. Dr. Debanjan Chakraborty to speak against the motion from the Calcutta Cricket and Football Club.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Chairman, sir, members of the jury. Something's rotten in this state, Hamlet said of his Denmark. I say there's something very rotten, fundamentally rotten about the motion that we are debating today. The right not to work is a fundamental one in West Bengal. Let's look at the topic from the perspective of jurisprudence or the philosophy of law. Rights are entitlements, as my esteemed colleague Mr. Borat said earlier in his deposition. Entitlements and rights are expressed as positive statements. They cannot be expressed as negative statements. Take, for instance, the 7 fundamental rights enshrined in Section 3 of the Indian Constitution. They go such as right to life, right to freedom of speech and expression, right to liberty. Rights also carry with them fundamental duties. Very recently, the Indian Parliament enacted the fundamental right of every child below the age of 14 to free and compulsory education. The corresponding duty for that right for every parent is to ensure that every child below the age of 14 goes to school. Imagine a scenario where we admit the fundamental right not to work. What would be the obverse duty of enforcing that fundamental right? The person trying to enforce the fundamental right not to work will end up working to enforce the fundamental right not to work. What a scenario. Rights, therefore, cannot be expressed in the negative in the first place. We have spoken about, the moderator, sir, you have spoken about Bengal. We are an argumentative lot. So for the sake of argument, let me admit for a moment that the right not to work is a fundamental one in West Bengal. A right has to be equally applicable to every citizen. The right has to be equally acceptable to every citizen. Will we as an individual or as a collective accept the right not to work? What happens to individuals who do not accept the right not to work? And indeed, can the government of West Bengal be a guarantor of a fundamental right not to work? Only the government of India can guarantee such a fundamental right. Moving on from that example of the complicated web of interrelationships between the individual, the state, and the nation, imagine in the global economic scenario where everything is joined up. I think only a stray village idiot in a village economy can actually abstain from elect not to work, can abstain from not working. It's a globalized world, it's a globalized economy. We are all cogs in the wheel. We simply cannot make that work. The fundamental right not to work simply doesn't work. I will end on a personal note. I came back with my wife. Both of us went to the UK for our research studies. We came back, made a very conscious decision to come back and live in Kolkata and work in Kolkata, and we have not regretted that for a single minute in the last 8 years that we have been in Kolkata. Soon after coming back one day, we were on a minibus, and the conductor, in the time-honored tradition of Bengal, said, "Dada, pechoner dike egiye jan." And as someone who earns his bread by language, I was struck by the absurdity of that metaphor. My plea to my worthy opponents is, please do not try to progress by pushing back the state. We will then not be living in West Bengal, we will be living in Waste Bengal. Thank you.
You talked a lot about the fundamental constitutional rights. There was a time when there was slavery. Possibly, it is rumored it still exists in India today. Clearly, we all know the term bonded labor. Do you believe that somebody who is bonded in labor should have the right not to work?
I think the initial reference to slavery, sir, when slavery was legal, is we are talking about frames of references spread across a vast stretch of time and history. And historical contexts are very necessary when we talk about law and jurisprudence. Coming back specifically to your question about bonded labor, since bonded labor is actually illegal, it is therefore inadmissible in a debating context to say how one can actually, respond to the right not to work within a framework of legal, in a legal vacuum, if I may say so.
May I, on behalf of Dr. Debanshu Chakraborty, make just one observation. We are talking about Bengal and the right not to work in Bengal or otherwise. I'm happy to imagine, I don't know whether it's right, that I don't think there is bonded labor in Bengal. So therefore the question of not, the question of asking whether or not bonded labor is permissible or not, or whether a bonded laborer has the right not to work or not, probably doesn't arise in West Bengal. May I now move on to the representatives of the Hindustan Club. I don't know which order. Mr. Shiv Kumar Lohia will speak for the motion.
Moderator Mr. Deepak Rudra, sir, my fellow members of the contestant clubs, ladies and gentlemen. It is a matter of great pleasure for me to be speaking to you on this subject. But equally I am very sad that I have to say and support this motion, because you see, we all know that there cannot be smoke without fire. Just the only thing that we are discussing this subject and we are talking about this subject itself shows that there is the existence of this subject in our society. So, because everybody is disturbed that what is happening, I am obliged to Mr. Rudra, who recognized our family, who are here since 150 years. And I feel very sad as a son of soil that when we go outside West Bengal, how much they are progressing and what is the work culture. So we have to understand that what we are lacking. We can have an academic discussion of all sorts, but the ground realities will not change. So we have to think about the ground realities, and for that ground realities we have to understand that if our Honorable Chief Minister, when she came to power, on that time she told, and I would like to quote, that we the people, Bengal's people, want to see that work culture of Bengal must restore within few years, which were lost at the time of left front government. She appealed to all public servants to work together after forgetting you and we division. She sent a fax to all the departments. So, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to present this statement to you. And even our Honorable Chief Minister also admits that there is a problem here of the work culture and lack of it. So I think she is far better placed than all of us here, and she knows what is the situation because she has to face it daily in her writer's building. So we can have any type of academic discussion, but what are the ground realities? Just when we change the calendar, always we first see the red colors. We all find out how much holidays are there. For the first time in my lifetime, there has been 4 days when no newspaper were published during this puja. But I have not seen it, and I think you will agree with that. For the first time, 10 days holidays were declared during puja, accommodating our honorable staff to go on leave and have enjoyment on the puja, forgetting all the work culture. No government website is updated. I go to these websites after 2009, nothing is this. Our education system, we all know what is happening in the name of education. Fat salary, no education. All the offices you go in the government offices, stacks of dirty papers are filled up in the table. So we can find that small scale industries, all the laborers, are the pawns of the political system here. Today I would like to quote this newspaper of today, which under the heading that sacked workers pawns in the Haldia power tussle. So suppose if we want to work, the politics will not allow the people to work. And our earlier speaker told that all the fundamental rights are in positive, but this is the imagination of our people. They can also find out one negative fundamental right also. I would have been happy that instead of talking to you on this subject, if you could have discussed that what Bengal thinks today, rest India thinks tomorrow. But I am very sorry that this is not the subject in our minds. It is a subject where we have to survive ourselves. And if we cannot be on the denial mode, time is up. We cannot be in the denial mode. But if we don't accept the problem, we cannot solve it. That is our specialty. I will request everyone not to go in the academic. Who is saying what is in the dictionary, who has said what. But what is the ground realities here? We have to see what we are facing daily. We have to find out. We have to introspect. That is my view, and I strongly support this with all my conviction and might, this motion. Thank you.
Yeah. What you said is definitely true for the Bengali Babu. But if you look at the majority Bengalis who have to work in the fields, in the agricultural sector, in the informal sector, they have to work very hard to earn their living. So if you go by the majority, if you go by the average, don't you think Bengalis do have to work very hard to, just to survive?
Sir, I would just like to tell you that I have a figure, 72% of the people in Bengal are rural people. And the agricultural production has come down during last 3, 4, 5 years. And even if you go agriculture field in other states, and if you visit here, you will find gulf of difference. What the people, it is not the question that what we are doing, it is a question what we can achieve, and what we are missing, and what we are losing. Although we are all surviving, we are having our both square meals, that is no doubt about it. But what we are missing, that has to be taken up. What we are losing, what we can achieve, and what we are getting. This is a gulf of difference, like a Suez Canal. That is what I want to tell you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lohia, for bringing some home truths to bear on the audience and to everybody here. I like that particular bit about the websites of the West Bengal government, the much not being updated from 2009. I think the time stopped somewhere around that time for the state. Now we have Mr. Narendra Tulsian to speak against the motion from the same club, Hindustan Club.
Mr. Moderator, sir, members of the jury, fellow contestants, ladies and gentlemen, I really feel ashamed to stand here to talk and discuss about a topic which is insult to the people of West Bengal. As moderator, sir, put it very briefly in his opening remark, that this topic is unfair to the people of Bengal. Me and my family are part of this great land for last 100 years. My great-grandfathers have been born here, they have lived here, I am born here, I am living here. Before talking about what is Bengal, what we think about Bengal, do we know what Bengal is and what Bengalis have done for this country and for this state? I can remember, I take you back down memory lane, what my grandfathers, my grandparents taught me about Bengal. They said to me, in 1857, the seeds of freedom were sowed in the Barakpur barrack by Mr. Mangal Pandey. There have been freedom fighters like Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. They're like Binay, Badal, and Dinesh, in whose name we have BVD Bagh, Matangini Hajra. You can name hundreds of freedom fighters who laid their life to make us free. I still remember one 18-year-old boy who died with a smiling face under the gallows of brutal English Raj, and a poet has to write, Ekbar bidai dema ঘুরে আসি হাসতে হাসতে ছড়ব পাসি দেখবে ভারতবাসী. Do we remember? If you would have thought right not to work is right, we would not have been alive and would not have been independent in this India today. I still remember what is taught by my parents, Guru Rabindranath Tagore. He said, যদি তোর ডাক শুনে কেউ না আসে তবে একলা চলো রে. This is an indictment and this is an encouragement to all the people of the world. If nobody is with you, at least you have courage to walk alone and work. What for we are waiting? This motherland is full of people, saints, scientists, religious teachers, and prophets. I can name hundreds. It will be not 4 minutes, 40 hours. I can speak and name them. They have breathed and lived and led their life that we are here. When my friend was speaking, we all were laughing. Fine. When a debate is there to enjoy also. But put and go into your heart. What we are laughing is not about ourselves. We are laughing about people who have brought us here on this earth, in this free India. Right not to work is not a solution to the problem. I'm a business for the last 36 years. I'm also facing the same problem which my friend and the other people who are speaking on behalf of the motion. It's in the mindset whether you would like to work or not. If your life is at danger, you save your life at any cost. Why? Because you feel necessity to save your life. Similarly, when we are Bengalis, I proudly call myself a Bengali, though I am a Marwari by hailing from Rajasthan. My ancestrals were there, but I am more than a Bengali. I would say it is the Bengal that in India there have been 6 Nobel laureates till date, and out of 6, 3 are from Bengal. This is the contribution of Bengal to the entire nation. And what we are talking, kaj korte parbo na, kaj korte debo na. Let us change the mindset. India is going to be the superpower by 2030, as per the BRICS studies. And it cannot achieve if we are not working. Today, India is the youngest nation of young people in the world. Let us arouse the passion of the young people to tell them you have got talent, you have got resources. You work for the country, you work for Bengal, and you will be there not by 2030, you will be there by 2025. That is the power of magic in people of Bengal. And I can certainly say that Bengal is not only rocking today, it rocked yesterday, it is rocking today, it will rock tomorrow. Only thing is that we have to have self-belief and self-conviction that yes, we can do something to this great state. And right not to work should not be the topic. I want work, I will work should be the topic. This is what I can say, and thank you to all the people.
Don't you think that just living in the past won't do? That we will have to take things forward, and how do you think we could do it? What is your suggestion?
I'm thankful to you for since you have been on stage for 50 years, as this was told by the moderator, and if you can work for 50 years, you are yourself an example what can be done in the city of Calcutta. I think we don't need answer from anybody. She has answered my question. It is the positive outlook you need, ma'am. Nothing else. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Tulshan. We have two spirited Bengalis, two most spirited Bengalis among us here. May I now go on to, I think it's now the turn of the Ordnance Club. Yes, that's right. I don't know in which order we'd like to speak. Is Mr. Karan Kakkar to speak for the motion?
A very good evening to everyone present here. I would like to begin my speech this evening by quoting the late Abraham Lincoln. Most folks are as happy as they make their minds up to be. Now this line is very much applicable to Bengal in general. To put it in simple words, we are very happy with the present state of affairs in Bengal. Why is that? Because we don't do anything to change it. The right not to work is very much applicable in Bengal. The mentality here is very satisfactory in nature. People here have a laid-back attitude towards life. They have taken the jobs for granted. They have achieved what they have wanted in life, and they do not want to progress and achieve more. They are very satisfied. While the whole world is working for new ideas and new ways to progress, I'm very sorry to say, we are working on ideas to call the next Bandh. People here want everything served on a silver platter to them. They don't want to work and make an effort to get it. It is not that there is not only work here, it is that the people here do not want to work. While the whole world is working tirelessly under the sun, our shopkeepers are busy enjoying their midday siestas at their respective homes. Now this is the difference between us and the developing states. Now I would like to ask a question here. Why can't Bengal be the most developing state in India? Why can't the people of other states look up to us? Is it that they have a different diet? Well, the answer is no. It is because of us that Bengal is at this state where it is. It is because of our nature to be complacent and our mentality that where we are here. Now, our state is very famous for its buns. Is this something to be proud of? Why is that the work turnout ratio during a band is the least in Bengal as compared to other states? If we are told not to eat during a band, will we stop? No. Then why do we stop working during a band? It is because of us that bands are such a success in Bengal. Now the people here want to get by without working and putting in that extra effort. Let me illustrate this with an example. Now, all I want is 5 chocolates a day from my parents. And I'm under the thought that I will get those 5 chocolates a day, irrespective whether I study or not. Then why will I study? Why will I put in that extra effort when I know that I will get those 5 chocolates a day? On the other hand, if I would have got those 5 chocolates on the condition that I work and perform and show results, then yes, I would have put in that effort for the chocolates. Now this example very much prevails in Bengal. The people here think that they will get those 5 chocolates a day, irrespective whether they work or not. They think they will get by. Now the next example I would like to put your attention to is that of lunch breaks. Now lunch breaks generally extend up to half an hour or so. But if we observe, they extend up to more than an hour at a stretch in Bengal. Why is that so? This is because the workers here have taken the jobs for granted. That the superiors do the same, thus forming a vicious circle and a chain. Now, all people who have aspirations in life to become something in life move on to other states to work and for a better living. Why is that so? This is because of the reason that the atmosphere and the working culture here is not supportive for new talent to thrive on. Now, even after a person going through all these issues and all these obstacles comes to the conclusion that yes, I can work, and his mentality is set to work, he's stopped by the so-called para goons of a society. These idle people themselves do not work and do not let other people work. Until such antisocial elements are existing in a society, then when can Bengal see a working culture, my friends? It is also be noted that the political scenario here is also not at all supportive for work. The parties are busy fighting amongst themselves rather than looking after its people. We can see this with examples of top-notch company withdrawals, such as the Tatas and the Infosys. Now, people here are busy fighting among themselves and hindering each other's work. When will they have time to work themselves? The Bengal financial debt as of 2011 was 1,91,835 crore rupees to be precise. Now, this is something to look on. This is the state of Bengal at present. If the state cannot look after itself, how will it look after its people? Now, these points show the fact that the right not to work is very much applicable in Bengal. And I would conclude my speech by saying, change your minds, your world will change. Thank you.
It has been observed generally that Bengalis who go out of Bengal do pretty well. So why do you think that happens? I mean, so there is nothing inherently wrong about Bengalis, right? Something wrong with Bengal.
Right.
So what is wrong with Bengal? I mean, can you identify what exactly is wrong with Bengal but not wrong with Bengalis?
The thing here is that the political situation is such that companies are coming here and going back. It is not that companies don't want to come here. Everything comes at a risk. When Infosys wanted a special economic zone, we denied that. Now we have to take a risk to move forward in life. Now if companies such as these move out, then people have no other choice but to move to other states and work. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kakkar. May I make a few snide remarks, if the audience will permit me. I was very interested to hear about the problem. Mr. Kakkar mentioned raised a question about whether there's something wrong with our diet. I think there's something wrong with our diet here. Bengalis can't do without their maj bhat in the afternoon, etc. And I know at least 2 film actors of great repute who are stars in Bengal, at least, and one of them went on to become a star in Bombay as well, who would have a 2-hour lunch break, and they would go off to sleep, and they would say that they can't do without their so-called bhat ghoom. And so therefore, and that apart, this was about even in the golden age of corporates in Bengal, when people from St. Stephen's and other states, other institutions in other places, used to come to Calcutta for the stone houses on Strand Road, for example, the managing agencies, there used to be a tremendous lunch break in all these companies. It's not something of recent origin. People who worked in tea companies in various establishments here used to go in for a lunch break. And I think their pink gins used to extend till 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and after which they went off to play tennis. And most of them used to see the world through a pink blur, as they used to say. So it's not something which is of recent origin. Even people who came to the state were influenced by the atmosphere, the air, the laid-back atmosphere, the chalta hai attitude of the state. So it's not something of recent origin. I don't know whether things will change. I hope things are changing now. Less people in the corporate world of pink gins, or shall we say laid-back afternoons, playing golf or cricket, for that matter. But you know, this is nothing of. There is something wrong with our diet, something wrong with our dietary habits, with our bibulous habits, if I may put it that way. Certainly nothing wrong with that. And these habits continue here. When you come to clubs like the Tolly in the afternoons, or especially late summer afternoons or early winter afternoons, you can forget the rest of the world. I mean, things don't exist outside these clubs. You know, they're little islands of, shall we say, indolence, good times. We can hardly imagine that the world works at all for a living. And for that matter, Bengal works for a living, needs to work for a living. Thank you very much. Now we come to the second speaker from the Ordnance Club, Mr. Yash Gupta. I hope he demolishes Mr. Kakkar's arguments quite comprehensively.
Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. I come to bury Bengal, not to praise her. The evil that men do lives after them. The good they do is oft interred with their bones. So let it be with Bengal. Now, my worthy opponents today have painted a very grim, a very dark picture of Bengali people and Bengali enterprise, since they believe that Bengali people are not capable of any enterprise. Well, I'd like to tackle this stance of theirs using two main principles. Firstly, I'd like to talk about the kind of governance that Bengal has seen. And secondly, I'd like to talk about the danger and the harm of such regional stereotypes being taken seriously. So firstly, ladies and gentlemen, let me talk to you about the governance of Bengal. Now, my worthy opponents have tried to come and tell you that, you know, people in Bengal do not work to their complete potential and that they take their jobs for granted. What I'd like to tell you is that they are not given an opportunity, a stage to fully exploit their potential. And it is, in fact, they who have been taken for granted by successive governments. Now, people might say that, you know, government is merely reflective of its people, and if the government is bad, then so are the people. But I'd like to say that this is a bit of a fallacy when it comes to West Bengal, and I'll tell you why. Now, Bengal, in the last 40 years, has never been ruled by a major national party, such as the BJP or the Congress. What we've had are regional players, such as the Left Front and the Trinamool Congress, who've always tried to score more brownie points at the center and have used Bengal as a bargaining chip. And Bengal, unfortunately, has always ended up worse off after these bargains. Let me give you an example. So the Trinamool Congress had allied itself with the Congress very recently, and Bengal was supposed to get a lot of funds because of that alliance. However, after the FDI problem, Mamata Banerjee broke off that alliance. Now, what that did cause was a lot of political mileage for the Trinamool Congress, and everyone was like, oh my God, Mamata Banerjee, she's a woman who can stand by her principles. But what it essentially led to was that all of those funds which were coming to Bengal are not coming in anymore. And these problems have happened for the last 40 years. It's been a recurrent theme in Bengal, where we've seen since the times of Jyoti Basu, the state governments have always blamed the center for the state's apathy. However, it has been the state government's less than cordial relationship with the center which has led to these problems, right? It is because of this that Bengal has never received that infrastructural booster shot which is so necessary for a developing state. It is because of this that Bengal's productive capacity has never been enhanced. And if you're and the capacity which currently exists cannot possibly absorb or exhaust everyone's complete potential. I'm sure Mr. Sarkar would know. It's simple economics, right? With an increase in labor, you have to have an increase in capital. And that rise in capital has never come. Now, even if that rise in capital could have come indigenously or endogenously, it has never been allowed simply because our governments enjoy the right to disrupt other people's work. If all kinds of enterprises, all kinds of efforts by businessmen here have always been curtailed by red tape, by bureaucracy, A man like Ratan Tata had to run away from our state. Now, if a person does not let me work, if my government disrupts my work, I cannot possibly work. Whether I want to work or not becomes a redundant and irrelevant question. Now, lastly, ladies and gentlemen, let me talk about regional stereotypes. This motion today is nothing but that Bengalis enjoy the right to not work. I mean, very plainly speaking, each and every person in the world enjoys the right not to work. You can't force anyone to work. But these regional stereotypes are very dangerous. Some other stereotypes exist, such as all Sardars are silly or all North Indians are ill-mannered. But do any of these stereotypes actually make sense, ladies and gentlemen? Is any wise man ever supposed to take such a stereotype seriously? So it would be extremely stupid of a person to believe in such a stereotype and come out here and propagate it. In fact, these stereotypes are extremely dangerous since it's stereotypes like these which lead to problems such as racism and sexism. Hence, I would like to condemn the proposition today for trying to propagate a statement which is at best a joke and at worst an insult. So in conclusion, I'd just like to say, O judgment, thou art fled to brutish beasts and men have lost their reason. Bear with me. My heart is in the coffin there with Bengal, and I must pause till it comes back to me. Thank you.
Mr. Gupta, your theory is that the reason why the state has not done well and there are no jobs is because of the political construct of local parties winning elections for the last so many years. Number one. Number two, your further theory is that the state is at loggerheads with the center, which is why it doesn't progress. The first point that you made holds equally good for Tamil Nadu. They haven't had a central party for many, many years. And yet they have a robust automotive industry. The second point, Gujarat, the state of Gujarat, are at loggerheads with the center and have been for a while. And yet they seem to be progressing. So how do you explain this?
Sir, if I could just have a little bit of time, because I wanted to incorporate these in my speech, but because of 4 minutes I couldn't do it. So the thing that Tamil Nadu has is that its governments are stable in the sense that the DMK has always been allied with the Congress, and Jayalalitha, apart from once, has more or less been favouring the BJP. Here, the Trinamool tries to play the card and tries to ally itself with both depending on its convenience, right? So even if they are regional parties, they have strong allegiances to one side of either the Congress or the BJP. The left and the Trinamool do not have any such fixed ideologies, right? Also with Gujarat has at least always been ruled by the BJP. And the BJP, in a sense, has been part of the national movement. I mean, has been in power at the national level. So because of that, sir, we, do not face as much of a problem, that state. So if you look at other states which face the problem that we do, a correct example would be Jammu and Kashmir, or maybe even Bihar till Nitish Kumar came up, but even prior to that, or even a state like Uttar Pradesh, where Samajwadi Party and BSP keep playing different cards, trying to ally themselves with both the BJP and the Congress.
Thank you, Mr. Gupta. Very well argued presentation, I think. Shall we now move on to, I think, the Saturday Club, please? Is there this? Yes. Mr. Devadasan to speak for the motion. Mr. Devadasan is a very popular and a very well-known figure in debating circles in Calcutta for many years now. I think all of us should give him a special welcome.
Mr. Moderator, ladies and gentlemen, 3M is a very famous company. To give you broad statistics, it's a $28 to $30 billion company which exists in 50 countries, has a total of 50,000 products and over 1 lakh employees employed in these 50 countries. 3M is a dynamic company. In fact, it is one of the important companies making up the Dow Jones average. Bengal is equal to 3M. We have our 3M as well. Ma, Marty, Manush. Right. But there, I'm sorry, the comparison ends. Right? Because 3M, which started life as Minnesota Mining and Manufacturing Company, has come a long way since 1905. We have not. Today, Bengal survives on the sinews, the muscles, and the strain and strenuous efforts of Bihar, Jharkhand, and Orissa. If today all these gentlemen belonging to these various states decided to go back to their respective states, Bada Bazar would be an urban desert. And this is not an overstatement. I know some of my colleagues here have become quite dramatic, quite emotional. I do not wish to become emotional. All I wish to say is, Calcutta is a north-south city. Our total available space for roads is 6%, compared to 25% in Mumbai, 36% in Delhi. And yet there is something called the metro channel, which is an important artery. And between 4 days and 20 days, the metro channel hosts public meetings, during which the police have nightmares. Commuters do not just have nightmares, they stop moving. Right? Everything is in reverse gear. Where do these people come from? Who are these people who are constituting these public meetings? People who have nothing else to do than to come and stand there and listen to the vapid outpourings of some leader or the other. But this is a fact of life. You and I live with it. So we know that in Bengal, there is a problem of the absence of work culture. People would rather not work. We are not making an extreme statement about the fundamental right not to work. We are just making the statement that, given the choice, they would prefer not to work. So we have, first of all, the 3 M's, which have now become the theme for Bengal. Ma, Mati, Manush. Right? What it means exactly, I'm not very sure. I don't think the people who formulated that slogan also are very sure what it means, because it includes the mother, it includes the soil, and it includes human beings, right? So I'm not too sure what the mixture is. 3M is very clear about where they want to go. They have a unit in India which makes things like Scotch Brite, Scotch tape, so on and so forth. A great number of very useful household articles. The 3M that we have in Bengal is a far cry from there. So if we depend entirely on other states to do the work for us, then Mr. Raj Thackeray is not so far irrelevant when he says that he does not want UPites and Biharis in Maharashtra. But the risk is, if you've been to Mumbai recently, you know that every Thela Gadi, every single taxi is operated by people from outside Maharashtra. Maharashtrians will not lower their dignity by driving a taxi. Right? So it's the Bihari who drives the taxi, it's the Bihari who pulls the Thela Gadi, and so on. And the story in Bengal is not very different. In fact, the story in Bengal is almost identical. We depend very much on these people to do our manual labor, to do what is called work. Now, lastly, to bring up the example of the public sector and the government departments, one of my earlier speakers had said that somebody feels so conscious of his national dignity that though he comes late to work, he leaves work early to make up for it. Right? Standard practice, you don't have to go to Writers' Building to see that. Writers' Building till 10:30 in the morning is an absolute desert. You won't find a soul. And I know that our moderator himself has spent a greater part of his career in and out of Writers' Building. So I'm sure that in his mind he knows. I had dealings with him once when he was Transport Secretary, and I still remember he dictated a letter to his stenographer. And then we waited for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, there was no sign of his stenographer. So finally he went out to find out where the man was. The man showed up, he reported, and he said, sorry, my 6 letters are up. The coordination committee rule is 6 letters to be typed per day. Your letter, which you dictated, was the 7th letter. He will take it up in the morning. Right. This was the attitude to work. And this I can personally vouch for because I was sitting in his office opposite to him when this entire incident took place. Yeah. Very sad, but very true. So, ladies and gentlemen, to summarize what we are trying to say here for the motion is this, that we won't go so far as to say it's a fundamental right not to work. There are some fundamental rights in India. For example, right to information, right to equality. The most the latest legislation is the right to education, which was mentioned by one of the speakers. But we have evolved a new right, the RTU, right to unemployment. It's a right that has evolved in Bengal. Why? Not because we want to be unemployed, but it's a preferable state of affairs. It's a preferable state of affairs. My great respect is for the Baudi, the housewife, who continues to work painfully, struggling to run her house, despite the fact that her husband is a net liability. And I'm truly amazed at them. Particularly since they don't get an increment. I'm talking about the housewife. I am not aware of any housewife who got a promotion. Their husbands, whenever they do deign to show up in office, are very concerned about the increment and their promotion. I would like to see a situation, ladies and gentlemen, where a gentleman comes home one day and says, I am very happy with your work, my dear wife. Therefore, from tomorrow, you are promoted. I am bringing a young chokri who will do the work in this house. You will be BB number 1. Right? I cannot imagine any woman accepting that situation. Right? And what do they work for? If they don't get an increment, they don't get a promotion, they don't get the conventional rewards of work, then what are they working for? In fact, they don't even get appreciation.
Mr. Devadasan, please conclude.
Sorry.
Please conclude.
Yes, I'm finishing. The only conclusion that they get, the only satisfaction they get is surrogate. The children doing well in school, the husband looking smart when he goes out. But that's, ladies and gentlemen, our argument for the motion. Thank you. Questions, please. Yes, ma'am.
Have you ever thought of giving an increment to your wife or a promotion?
I have thought of neither, because a pressure cooker in her hand is a very dangerous instrument.
No, then you can't complain about others.
Others,
you haven't done it.
I could not do it here. I could not do it. Apart from her competence in karate. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Devadasan. The other participants are complaining that you have been allowed twice the time that they have been. Anyway, that's okay. Now, I can only say that the story he said, he recounted about his being in my office, my stenographer not typing a letter because it was beyond his quota of 6 letters, is entirely fictitious. Mr. Saurabh Singh, to speak against the motion, the Saturday Club.
Just a little observation before I start speaking. I wanted to say thank you very much to the people speaking in favor of the motion. You've made a lot of interesting points. You've quoted a lot of interesting statistics. You've spoken for 7 minutes when you should have spoken for 4 minutes. And you've done a lot of work to convince us that we shouldn't be working. Thank you. There's a little joke about a grasshopper and an ant. There was a grasshopper once that was starving on a winter day. The grasshopper saw the ant, which was storing food for winter, and went to the ant and said, "Can I get some food from you? I'm hungry." The ant asked the grasshopper, "What were you doing during the summer when we were storing our food?" The grasshopper said, "I was singing because it was so bright and beautiful." The ant turned around and said, "Then why don't you dance through the winter?" Mr. Chairman, sir, members of the House, the topic here is that the right not to work is a fundamental one in Bengal. The first point I wanted to make is that working was never a right. If anyone's read the Gita, what it says very clearly and is that it's your duty to work. It's not your right to expect the rewards of that work. Leave it to the gods. So I find it bizarre that we're even discussing a right or not a right to work. I wanted to make a point about what the members of my opposition are talking. They're saying 5 chocolates, we are all very happy, not working, etc. Just a few statistics about West Bengal. Everyone knows this is a bankrupt state, bankrupted over the last 34 years. Everyone knows that a meager 28% of the population of the state gets filtered drinking water, which is one of the lowest of all national averages in this country. In primary education, we are ranking 33rd in the country. And the 3 areas where our wonderful state is leading in the country are child mortality, violence against women, and girl trafficking. In a situation like that, where the state is on the verge of bankruptcy, where you're paying 16,000 crores a year towards annual interest. My question to the people speaking for the motion is, can you really afford not to work? 5 chocolates a day will give you diabetes. 5 chocolates a day will eventually bankrupt you. But believe me, at some stage or the other, you're going to have to work. Again, coming to the fundamental right to not work in Bengal, we don't work only because we have to pay the bills or we have to match our assets and liabilities at the end of the month. We work because it keeps us motivated. We work because it gives us a sense of achievement, a sense of pride. There's a famous saying, the heights by great men reached and kept were not attained by sudden flight, but they, while their companions slept, were toiling upward in the night. Mr. Devdasan spoke about immigrants doing all the work in Bengal. I worked in Europe for over a decade, and we're all hearing about the bankruptcy of Europe today, the fact that Italians are pawning their gold to meet their monthly budgets, blah, blah, blah. If you see why that happened, it was a sense of entitlement. A sense that we don't need to work, but we can enjoy all the rewards that come with the work just because we were born with fair skin and because our ancestors worked hard for us. If anybody works, it's the immigrants, exactly like what he said in Bengal, who will come and work for us. That sense of entitlement has basically bankrupted Europe today. House prices have fallen 70%, people are stuck in negative equity. If that's the kind of legacy you want to bequeath to your children, then yeah, you can say that it's a fundamental right not to work, and best of luck to you. I wanted to make another point about the importance of religion per se in West Bengal. We are a society where the pujos are so important, where everybody, dresses up their best and goes and worships in the pujos. Every religion under the sun, Hindu, Muslim, whatever, all tells people that you need to work. It's important to work. I'll give you a few examples. In the Ishopanishad, only by performing work one should desire to live 100 years. Vivekananda, go and set your shoulders to the wheel. Rich rewards will come to him who works with a smiling face. Rabindranath Tagore in Gitanjali, come out of thy meditations, leave aside thy flowers. What harm is there if their clothes become tattered and stained? Meet him, stand by him in toil and sweat of thy brow. So if we are a religious society, that's at loggerheads with saying we don't want to work. I want to end with a little quote from Steve Jobs, self-made billionaire. Your work is going to fill a large part of your life, and the only way to be truly satisfied is to do what you believe is great work. The only great work is to love what you do. If you haven't found it yet, keep looking and don't settle. Stay hungry, stay foolish. The point I'm trying to make, friends, is that working is not something to be looked down upon. It's something that we need to enjoy. And that's the kind of mindset you need in a state that's already bankrupt.
I'm a bit uncertain about 2 figures you quoted. That one was about Bengal being number 33 in terms of primary education and topping in terms of child mortality. I don't think that is strictly correct. Would you, first of all, would you quote the source where you got them? And second, Bengal is basically an average state. In terms of, if you look at the all India average, Bengal is about the average. We are not way below, you see. So I don't think it's right to depict Bengal as one of the very, very backward states. I don't think that is true. What would be your reaction?
I think that's a good point. There's a lot of talk that Bengal is a solid in the middle state. I was just quoting the statistics that we get in terms of the debt figure, in terms of our debt repayments. Some of these statistics that I quoted were actually mentioned by Mrs. Sonia Gandhi. So I guess we need to take them with a pinch of salt. And particularly, I may be wrong, I'm sorry. Yeah, but I was just trying to make a point. Thank you.
In the absence of the moderator, this is the Tollygunge Club team, and for the motion, the only doctor, physicist, Partho, you know who.
Well, Chairman, sir, members of the jury, I'll not pull out facts, figures, and statistics to support the motion, which is an axiomatic truth. Friends, Kolkatans and countrymen, I too come to praise Bengal, not to bury it. Indeed, if Shakespeare had been alive today, he would have surely written To work or not to work? That is the question. Whether it's nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous work, or to take up arms against a sea of corporates and by opposing end them, to lie, to sleep. It's a consummation devoutly to be wished. As Jerome K. Jerome said, idleness, like kisses, to be sweet must be stolen. Chairman, sir, our nostalgia of bunking classes in presidency and the idle sweetness of the hours we spent in the company of our girlfriends in coffee house. Who dares challenge this right to bliss so fundamental to West Bengal? And now to my own field of physics. Who doesn't know Newton's first law of motion, that famous law of inertia? It states every body continues in its state of rest until it is compelled to change that state by forces externally impressed. Rest is the most natural and pure state. It's a law of nature. Even the venerable Aristotle defended it. What is idleness, if not the physical manifestation of the desire to remain in that pure and natural state? It's a spiritual quest. Then look at what happened to the early mammals during the heyday of the dinosaurs. The more ambitious, energetic, and driven among the mammals competed with the dinosaurs on the surface and rapidly got eaten or trodden or destroyed, while the lazier of the mammals quietly slipped off to live down holes in the ground, only coming out at late at night when the great beasts were fast asleep, and only also when it was absolutely necessary. Then one day, 65 million years ago, the lazy mammals cautiously peeped out of their holes to see what all that noise was about. And they saw all the nasty dinosaurs just drop dead. So then they triumphantly emerged into the daylight to reap the rewards of their laziness, and thereby providing a new evolutionary pathway for mankind's existence today in a form that isn't all that scaly and slimy. Ladies and gentlemen, for all these reasons and more, I'm all for the right to not work. And I'm in the company of no less a mathematician and philosopher than Bertrand Russell, who wrote a lovely essay called In Praise of Idleness. Let me quote. I want to say in all seriousness that a great deal of harm is being done in the modern world by belief in the virtuousness of work, and that the road to happiness and prosperity lies in an organized diminution of work. As Lily Tomlin once said, the problem with the rat race is that even if you win, you are still a rat. So why not half the working time? Why not half the working time and the salaries? Then double the number of people will be employed. In Russell's words, first of all, what is work? And as a physicist also, I feel that's important to understand. Work is of two kinds. First, altering the position of matter at or near the Earth's surface relative to other similar matter. Second, telling other people to do so. The first kind is unpleasant and ill-paid. The second is pleasant and highly paid. The second kind is capable of indefinite extension. There are not only those who give orders, but those who give advice as to what orders should be given. Usually, two opposite kinds of advice are given simultaneously by two organized bodies of men. This is politics. And the skill required for this kind of work is not knowledge of the subjects as to which advice is required, but knowledge of the art of persuasive speaking and writing, that is of advertising. Russell went on to say that wise use of leisure, it must be conceded, is a product of civilization and education. And in which state in India does culture flourish better than in West Bengal? Well, ladies and gentlemen, frankly, I want to be lazy because it's the lazy people who invented the wheel and the bicycle because they didn't like walking or carrying things. you will agree that a lazy person doesn't harm anybody and has the least impact on the environment. So laziness is the most economically sustainable lifestyle today. In today's crazy world of work ethic, climate change, and global warming. So if you want to avoid a Sandy in Kolkata, cholbe na, kaj kara cholbe na. 3 cheers to our fundamental right not to work.
Thank you.
Parthuda, you were so very poetic. And since you say that, even giving advice is work, right? Paid work, I would like some advice. Now should I retire from dance and just stay idle?
What was the point of what I was saying? You need all the time in the world for your creative activities. If you work, and if you don't like the work, you are like a donkey. But I'm so glad that you have never been one.
I think finally we came to what can be called a debating presentation. Far from the reality of the theme, perhaps, but then very entertaining, extremely informative, and studded with quotations that we all perhaps must have read sometime, but could have forgotten but for his peroration this evening. Now we have the last speaker of the day, Mr. Masood Haq, to speak against the motion.
Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished judges, I have a grouse against Parthuda and Mr. Devdasan, who I've admired for many, many years. He spoke for 7.5 minutes. Parthuda spoke for 6. When I spoke for 5 minutes last year, I was nearly blackballed by Anil Mukherjee there. He said, "You're not coming back to Tolly Club anymore." So, if I overstep the ticker, please bear with me.
The host club has certain privileges.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. I'm honored. I am not going to go into politics. I'm not going to go into the urban things that Mr. Devdasan talked about. Bengal is not Bada Bazaar and Odia and Bihari. Bengal is much larger. Don't take a narrow view of this. I'm not going to be going into the past. The fixed deposit of Raja Ram Mohan Roy and all that, interest khachi hai, no. I'm going to be dealing with the present. And I'm going to be telling you there were some people from Hindustan Club who made some very, very pertinent points, right? One person in particular drove in a point which was so pertinent, but again went back to the past, right? So I'm going to be talking about the present. This motion stinks. It literally stinks because it's loose motion. Loose motion has to stink. So it stinks. And it's thoroughly flawed. But I'm so happy that, when people were moving the proposition, at least you were not laughing at the lampooning of Bengal, except when Mr. Devdasan spoke for 7.5 minutes about urban Bengal and what will happen to Bada Bazaar. There's much more to Bengal than Bada Bazaar. I am going to quote something where Mr. Abhirup Sarkar was quoted. It was a BBC article, online article. It was about India's big holiday season, bane or boon, sir. I read that, and you were quoted. Now, I'm not going to be quoting you because that will be going in favor of the proposition. But at the end of what he said, there was a comment from a Brit who called himself Al-Thames 57, whatever that means, Thames, whatever. And this article was about, but do Bengalis all deserve their holidays? Calcutta-based economist Abhirup Sarkar says, no, I'm not going to quote you. Mamta had declared 10 days of holidays. So this Brit says, what's wrong with 10 days off? You should see the parliamentary recesses or holidays our MPs have in Britain. They are truly the professionals. He said that's absolutely fine. Of course, Mr. Sarkar had another opinion. I'm not going to talk about that. You can go online and check that. The question that comes to my mind is Parliament. This Brit mentioned Parliament. Do you realize that from the monsoon season in 2011, monsoon session in Parliament has been disrupted, whether by 2G, 3G, SG, that's Sonia Gandhi, RG, Rahul Ji, whatever. It's been disrupted, and it costs 25 lakh rupees a day. See, the bell goes. I'm going to be stopped. Not per day, per hour. The Parliament cost is 25 lakhs per hour. What work are you talking about? What work is being disrupted in Calcutta or West Bengal? What work are you talking about? What work culture are you talking about? You come from a caste system. Work is divided. Bengalis were meant to do some other kind of work. I'm going to be quoting Iqbal, Allama Iqbal, hijacked by Pakistan, and Jinnah hijacked these verses. Tu Shaheen hai. Shaheen matlab falcon. परवाज काम है तेरा, असेंडिंग काम है तेरा, तेरे सामने आसमान और भी हैं. Too many skies above you. इस रोज शब में उलझ के ना रह जा. Don't get caught up in day to day messes of today. कि तेरे ज़मानों और मकान और भी हैं. Times and destinations are different for you. That's Bengal. Bengal was destined for that. Bengal was supposed to be a custodian and a conscience keeper of India. And Bengal is still doing this today. 2G, 3G, 4G, Bengal is not involved. One gynecologist in the most progressive state of Gujarat is indicted. A life giver goes behind bars. She's promoted her. Stop that. He went 7.5 minutes. I'll go 8 minutes. She went behind bars promoting dissent, killing. Bengal, whatever it may have been, it still continues to be. Tero Mashe, Sholo, Chotris, Parbon, Adda Baji Korbo, Ei Korbona, Kaj Korbona. But when they come back, in all their festivities, they promote harmony, the basic values of life. They continue the process which has stopped everywhere else in India. Brotherhood, fraternity, the continuity, the dissemination of values and ideals. Can't you realize that is work for Bengal? Iqbal did not write that for Pakistan. I have news from Lahore, confidential news. He wrote it for India, for Bengal. Lastly, I want to tell you, I want to quote Mr. Rupen Roy, who is not here anymore. Are you there, sir? You were supposed to be here. I read, fair forward Bengal. I know I will lose this debate because I'm going on to 10 minutes. You wrote, this topic is destructive, sir. I get inspiration from you and hope for Bengal. Many believe that Bengal's past is brighter than its future, that the best has been and the worst has yet to be. I refuse to write the epitaph for the gravestone of Bengal. I do not subscribe to the philosophy of determinism, which proclaims in essence that one's life is predetermined before one is even born. You wrote that, sir. And I'm saying, ladies and gentlemen, defeat this proposition. I don't want to win. I want you to defeat this proposition because there is negativism. Iqbal Shaheen, the glorious falcon, is in Bengal, nowhere else. I can tell you that. You can go to Raja and Praja. One Raja, Mantri, one Santri, Praja. You will not find it. It's here. And finally, it's the idealism that even Steve Jobs, who somebody quoted here, Steve Jobs, can you imagine? Bengal subscribes to that. In a 2001 Newsweek interview, he said, I would trade all my technology for one afternoon with Socrates. Socrates is where the falcon lives. And the falcon, Salam Ishq, Bengal.
Now, there's an element of shock and awe here.
I'm so sorry.
So
I didn't mean either of that.
We need to recover from that, and I have, for some reason, been elected possible, or maybe perhaps elected by my fellow jurists, and I believe selected by you.
No, not by me.
To take on the tiger in his lair.
Sure, please. Did I forget to recite Iqbal's Tu Shaheen Hai?
No, but you forgot. Why are you referring? My question to you, sir. What about the tiger?
Which tiger?
The Royal Bengal tiger.
Extinct. Or on the point of extinction. If you want me to ask me more, I have very strong opinions on the Royal Bengal tiger. But might shock the audience. I would have a drink with you and share with my opinions with you. Joydeep, Nida Fazli wrote this, which I'm sure an economist won't agree with. दो और दो का जोड़ हमेशा चार कहाँ होता है? 2 and 2 don't make 4 necessarily, sir. Apologies to ISI. सोच समझने वालों को थोड़ी नादानी दे मौला, innocence दे मौला. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think enough latitude has been given to the host club. So we've come to the end of the presentation, formal presentations for and against the motion. I think now we have another 10 minutes, that is 5 minutes per speaker. One speaker chosen by lot will speak for the motion, defend the motion, and another speaker, also chosen by lot, will speak against the motion. I think the gentleman in question, Dr. Krishnendu Mukherjee, will speak for the motion, and Mr. Chari, Mr. Anuruddh Chari, is supposed to speak against the motion. Oh, sorry, I'm sorry. So it's the other way around, is it? It's been given to me. So Mr. Chari is going to defend the motion. He's going to speak for the motion. He represents the entire body of people who spoke against the motion. Sorry, for the motion.
Mr. Chairman, sir, I'm here to sum up the arguments of the proposition. The opposition came, they saw, they spoke, they even sang, but they could not conquer. Because the right not to work is such an inalienable part of life in Bengal that nothing that you say, do, or sing is going to take it away. Whether you walk alone or you walk in a multitude, the story is the same. I think we've lost the woods for the trees a little bit. A distinction has to be made between Bengal as a state, where the right to work is, where the right not to work is in existence, and the Bengali people. We are constantly harping upon the Bengali people. The Bengali people, it's an ethnic term, whereas the state is meant as people living within the boundaries of the state. I think it's pointless to go into stereotypes of what the diet of the people is and of the indigenous people of the state is. What one is looking at is a philosophical, a social, a moral, an ethical, a political, and an economic dilemma. And it's the combination of these factors which we all need to wrap up, which has in turn contributed to what is this so-called negative right, i.e. the right not to work. Plus ça change, plus c'est la même chose. The more things change, the more they remain the same. And this is precisely the problem in Bengal today. We are not discussing whether Bengal is a failed state. We are not discussing whether it is a bankrupt state. We are not discussing the lack of political will. What are we discussing? We are discussing about a very simple right not to work. This debate has gone off in all sorts of tangential ways, including the scatological, which, though amusing, does not really have any impact upon what we're looking at or the points that we're trying to discuss. The basic point that we are trying to discuss is West Bengal as a political, social, economic entity. Is it the right of the people not to work in it? And it is because of all the factors that the members of the propositions have listed, indeed enumerated and elucidated upon, and we've shown that the basic moral fiber of the state is such that that the right not to work has become so deeply ingrained in us, has become such a basic and fundamental part of us, that it is indeed fundamental to our state of being. It's very important to look at this in the context of Bengal itself. There is no point in comparing this to various other states. There is no point in saying that state X has this and state Y has this. Why can't Bengal have it? For certain historical, social, and political factors, Bengal has evolved in the way that she has. And it is because of this evolution that the fiber of the state has also evolved. And since the fiber of the state has evolved in a particular way, the right not to work, or the desire not to work, or the will not to work, or the choice not to work has become a basic and integral part of it. And because it is such a basic and integral and indeed fundamental part of it, it is a fundamental right for the people of Bengal. Idleness. There is a huge difference between idleness and unemployment. Somebody said unemployment as being the right not to work. You are not unemployed by choice. You are merely unemployed, where you lose a job. The right not to work, or the choice not to work, the choice to be idle, is very different from being unemployed. Unemployment, you cannot control. Unemployment takes you in its grip and it finishes you off. The choice to be idle is a free one, where you say that because of certain factors, because I feel I cannot contribute in any way to the productivity of the state, to the energy of the state, to the vitality of the state, I am going to be idle. I choose to be idle because ultimately it amounts to nothing at all. And the most fundamentally sapping thing in Bengal is the fact that we are faced with a degree of frustration, with a degree of ennui, where all of us sit back and think, what good is it going to do? There are no rules to play by, so why bother playing at all? This debate has, in a sense, also, we look at our attitudes to professionalism in a certain sense, because we were all given a certain degree of time, a certain period of time for which to speak. A lot of the speakers went over that time. It was taken as being fine, there's no problem with it, carry on, have a laugh, have a joke. No speaker was stopped. If we had a serious commitment to work, if we had a serious commitment to the rules of the game, speakers would have been stopped, they would have been asked to get off stage. They were not. We tolerate everything. In this state, nothing eventually matters. Things move on as they always do. We will continue not to work. The state will go towards its doom or to some unearthly reality into which we've already descended, and we will all sit back with our pink gins, thinking back to a wonderfully blurry world. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chari. About that last jibe about some people being allowed to overstep their time limits, I think even in the midst of the most serious discussion in a debate like this one, I'm sure you have been part of many debates in the past and will be so in the future too. There are a few people who are tolerated, who are allowed to speak a little more. Perhaps by choice, also perhaps not by choice, because they somehow manage to capture the imagination and the attention of people who listen to them. So we are not here exactly in a classroom, we are not in a workplace, whether or not we enshrine the right to work or not. We are not exactly in a workplace. This is another place for idle chatter, as I said right at the beginning. So may I now have Dr. Krishnendu Mukherjee of the Calcutta Club to sum up the case against the motion.
I wish I was a few inches shorter. I'm referring to my height related to the microphones. It was a wonderful evening, a great debate, a lot of lessons learned. Lesson number one was that if you are representing the host club, or if you happen to be a very senior member of the Saturday club, then the clock will discover a fundamental right of stopping to work. The second lesson learned was it is very easy to propose a motion without actually going into the depth of the topic, and you can easily float around purely based on popular perceptions. The proposition opened their account from Calcutta Club with Mr. Borat telling you giving you a mathematical perspective. He quoted to you, in fact, how the English calendar runs, and he uses the English calendar to explain Bengali work culture. Then came forward CC&FC, and Mr. Chari, thanks to him, he made Bengalis very much like British. He quoted William Davies, "What is the time if full of care if we have no time to stand and stare?" Then came Hindustan Club, Mr. Lohia, and he said there cannot be smoke without fire. I can assure you, Mr. Lohia, it's possible both sides, both ways. You haven't seen an e-cigarette, you can have smoke without fire, and you yourself produced a lot of fire without any smoke. Next came Ordnance Club. Ordnance Club compared Bengalis to Italians, referring to midday siestas, and then made an excellent comment about companies wanting to come, but they are unable to come. It reminded me of a story that a rather shy young man was being quoted by a rather hot woman. She was unable to get the message across, so being desperate, she said that, "Do you want to see where I was operated on for appendicitis?" To this, the young man replied, "Oh gosh, no, I hate hospitals." Then she tried once more and said, "Don't you want my company?" To that, he replied, "Oh gosh, no, I hate factories." Then came Mr. Devadasan, and he spoke of 3M. And then he went on to a fourth M, the metro. And he told you that those 100 or 150 people out there who stop the metro every other day in Bengal, in Kolkata, they are the people who do not have any work. What he didn't tell you is there may be 100 people who are stopping the metro, but there are 10,000 people who are immediately out on the streets, and if it's in the morning, they do not go back home. They somehow crawl up on taxis or buses and they go to work. Then came my very respected Partha, not only a physicist, but an authority on Rabindranath. But this is the first time I found that chemistry can lead directly to biology. He told us of chemistry of girlfriends in coffee house, but he did not elaborate on the physics thereafter, and he proceeded straight to biology of dinosaurs and mammals. That was very interesting. I really do not have much to say, as a purse string. The motion is obviously defeated. It says to not work is a fundamental right in Bengal. The point is, ladies and gentlemen, we have, right at the beginning, told you that, yes, part of this popular perception that Bengal is not, as a state, one of the top states of India is correct. But that does not translate to the fact that majority of people in Bengal do not work. We have also accepted that there are certain areas in public sector units, in the government sectors, where people do not work. That's the system of a work culture. But there's a lot of private companies here, a lot of enterprising young Bengalis or people in Bengal, and there are many self-employed people where there's a lot of accountability at stake and people do work very hard. The last lesson from this debate is that I would go back to my own club, Calcutta Club, and urge our committee, our president, that please change our name to Kolkata Club. This is the second time I'm coming to this debate. Based on the strength or weakness of alphabetical order, whichever way we look at it, we are always the first team to speak. I think next time we should have a draw of lotteries. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mukherjee. I thought that was a fitting way to end this debate.